Hi, I'm Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology, and today we're going to do a deep dive into almutens in medieval Renaissance astrology. So the word almuten is basically Latin. It's a term of art. Comes from the Arabic, apparently almutaz, something like that. It just means the victor or the conqueror. I wasn't able to find this in terms of like Google Translate or whatever, but this is, and you can only find this in sort of astrological sources, but that makes sort of sense to me. Basically, what almutens are is a method of finding significators, and they're sort of like a ruler. As you say, victor or conqueror, that's kind of like a ruler, but basically, this is a method of finding significators, and so it's widely used in the sort of early medieval Arabic astrology as well as the medieval, and got even more popular in some ways in the Renaissance. By the time we get to the 17th century in England, not so much. I mean, Lilly in his Christian astrology doesn't really use almutens. So the source that I kind of drew on for this was Ben Dyke's introduction to his translation of Guido Bonai's Liber Astronomia. This is a pretty key source that was used as a primary text by 17th century English astrologers like Lilly. So good place to come back to. So in the introduction, Dykes mentions he sort of has classified different types of almutens. So the first one he talks about equal points. So he says what you do is you look for every planet that has a connection to a certain topic. And like, for example, they're dignified at that point, or they have an aspect to it or something like that. And then each planet gets 1 point for having that connection. And then the planets with the most points are the almuten. Um, and this looks like this may have been our sort of early medieval methodology, the Arabic methodology. He then talks about what's called weighted point, which I'm going to explain. We use this for the almuten of a house. And what you do is you look at a specific degree, in the case of a house, the house cusp degree, and see which planet has the highest essential dignity score for that degree. And I'm going to walk through that process. And so we'll see how that's done. And then the compound, what you do is you look at multiple degrees. And again, you see which planet has the highest essential dignity over the multiple degrees, as opposed to just one degree that we use for the house cusp. Now, this is used for almuten figuris. That's probably where people would run across the compound almuten. And Dykes says he claims that the early medieval, the Arabic astrology, that's really the source for the stuff that we do, didn't use the compound degree, and that this is sort of a later medieval, whatever thing they came up with. Now, again, Ben Dyke's a great guy. His translations are fabulous. He is coming out of an academic background, so I get this sort of feeling that, like, if it isn't in the original Arabic stuff, that there's something wrong with it. There's something wrong with being it. I take more of a cookbook approach. So again, if it's not in the 1931 Joy of Cooking, if the recipe for pancakes is different, and the 1975 Joy of Cooking has a different recipe, that doesn't mean the 1975 Joy of Cooking is bad just because it's a later recipe. Again, these are, the cookbooks are used to help you create real stuff. And if it works well, if you can come up with something new, then that's perfectly fine. So I really don't have a problem with this sort of compound. If the fact that it wasn't used in the early Arabic, if it works, it works. But what we're going to do is basically get a little sense of what the almuten of a house is. I'm going to walk through the calculation for that, and then we're gonna get talk a little bit more deeply about almutens, and then also just some of the issues that this kind of brought up from the common to almutens and other topics, but something that kind of highlighted by the fact of almutens. So if we're talking about almuten of a house, the standard way to determine the house ruler is you just look at the cusp, which is the boundary of the house, the degree, that's the first degree of the house, and you see what sign it's in. And whatever sign that happens to be in, so for example, if you got 7 Libra on the cusp of the ascendant, on the cusp of the first, then Venus, who's the ruler of Libra, rules the ascendant. So look at the 10th house. If you got Leo on the 10th house, Sun rules Leo, so Sun is the ruler of the 10th. Very straightforward. Now, with almutens, what you're going to do is you'll look at the specific degree on the cusp, and then we're going to add the essential dignities. Okay? We're going to add up the essential dignities and subtract the essential abilities. Okay, and then the planet with the highest score, or the planets that are high for the highest score, are the almutens of that house. So let me just go ahead and we'll just walk through showing you how to do this. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to figure out the house almutens for a house. It could be any house. Let's say it's the third house. And 16 Aries is on the cusp of the third house. In other words, 16 Aries is the first degree of that house. So you can see this up here. And what we're going to do is we'll do this for a horary and electional chart, and that which includes astrological magic, just to give you a sense of my methodology for this. See, and this I think I got from Robert Zoller, but my methodology is that I make a differentiation between horary and electional charts and natal charts as far as the triplicity rulers. So I'm just gonna, it's not saying it's right, it's the only way to do it, this is the correct method or anything like that. It's just, this is how I do it. It's one among many methodologies, but I just want to show you how I do it just to kind of be straight about it. So basically for horary and electional charts, you can see here it says we only give the daily ruler of triplicity by day or night ruler by night the +3 triplicity dignity. That means that the mixed ruler never gets +3, and the night ruler by day or day ruler by night doesn't get the +3. Okay, so pretty straightforward. So 16 Aries, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through all the essential dignities, and we're going to see which planet rules those essential dignities, and we're going to give that planet points if they rule the essential dignities. So if we start off with a sign ruler of Aries is going to be Mars, and then he gets +5. Okay, so you see that +5. Okay, then the next is the exaltation ruler, and Sun is exalted in Aries. Sun gets +4, which is the exaltation rulership. Okay, now let's flip over here. This is the Dorothean triplicity rulerships. Okay, so Aries, see, Sun is the triplicity ruler by day, Jupiter by night, and then Saturn is the mixed triplicity ruler. Okay, so since this is a day chart, Sun is going to get the +3 triplicity dignity, and that's it, because we're only the day ruler by day in this type of chart. So Sun gets +3. Okay, let's look at terms. So we got Aries, and it's 16. So you can see between 14 and 20 is Mercury. So Mercury is the term ruler. Okay. So Mercury gets +2, and then the face ruler, face gets +1, and the 16 Aries is going to be the second face, which is ruled by the Sun. So the Sun gets +1. Okay. So in detriment, Venus is in detriment in Aries, and Saturn's in fall in Aries. So Venus gets -5, Saturn gets -4. So we add all these up. So Mars gets +5, Sun gets +8. Okay, so you get exaltation is 4, triplicity ruler is 3, and face ruler is 1. You get 8. Venus is -5 and Saturn is -4. So the highest overall planet, highest score, is the Sun with +8. So the Sun is the almuten of 16 Aries by day in a horary or electional chart, which includes astrological magic, using my methodology. So let's just do this. Say it was a natal chart. A natal chart, again, this is just my own idiosyncratic method. I got this from Robert Zoller. All three triplicity rulers, whether it's a day or night or mixed, always get +3. So we don't need to worry about whether it's a day or night chart. We just always get the triplicity rulers +3. So let's just walk through it again. Sign ruler is Mars +5. Exaltation ruler is Sun +4, just like before. And here's the difference. Triplicity ruler of fire, there's 3 of them. So Sun is +3, Jupiter is +3, and Saturn is +3. Okay. Otherwise, it's the same. Mercury is the term ruler +2. Face ruler is the Sun +1. And then detriment is Venus, and fall is Saturn. Okay, so we add it up again. Mars is +5, Saturn is +8, Jupiter's +3, Mercury's +2, Venus is -5, and Saturn's -1. So the differences here is you got Jupiter in there, but he's only +3, so he doesn't. Sun's still the almuten, and Saturn again, he gets +3, but he's still -1. So for both the natal chart and for the horary and electional, Sun is going to be the almuten because he's got the highest dignity rulership there. Now, so that's an example basically of how you would add up the almuten rulers, and then how you use this dignity chart here. This is the one that's provided to my students in the course. Okay, so interesting to see that example, work through that, and just get a sense of how how that works and how the numbers kind of fit together, what you have to do. Now, with my students, when they do these, the first problem that students have is they have problems with a tie. So that flips them out. And the solution to that is very easy. If two planets have the same score, then they're both the co-almutens. And I think there's 1 degree by night, if you're using the night calculation, that has three. So it's potentially possible to have up to three co-almutens. But basically, you're going to have one almuten, or you're going to have two because they have the high score. Now, what will happen with people is they'll start getting freaked out about there being a tie or whatever, and they get confused and they start making stuff up. So one of the things that people, and my students in particular, do frequently is start trying to mix the house ruler in. And somehow, like I said, in this Aries, they're like, well, Mars is the house ruler, so he has to be the almuten, or the sun, or can't be Mars because he's the house. They get very tangled up with that. You can ignore the house ruler, whoever the house ruler is, except in terms as far as they get +5. I mean, the sign ruler, the normal ruler, is going to be the planet that rules the sign, and in the almuten calculation they get +5. But that's the only reason that you would be even thinking about that house ruler necessarily and not as a house ruler. You just ignore that. So basically, all you got to do is, just like I did, add up the numbers. That's all you got to do. Don't worry about anything else. Um, Again, if you add up the numbers and there's a tie, then they're both the almuten. Um, and so, okay, so we've been able to figure out the almutens. What do you do with them? Well, this raises some interesting issues. Um, I used to use them, my electional course is my oldest course, and I still have almutens in there. I kind of had been using them as sort of alternate house, you know, sort of like an alternate house ruler for the significators of people and things signified by the house in an election, like particularly in marriage. It's very tricky. You got the first and seventh houses you got to use for the spouses. And so there's a very limited number of pairs of planets. And oftentimes you can't find an election where both of those are unafflicted, or particularly when both of them dignified. So we start using the almutens. I've kind of over the years, I don't think that's wrong, but I've kind of decided, I don't want to do that so much. And I'll probably take that out. If I revise my electional course, I might well take that out, the almuten stuff out of there. So I basically don't use them that much. I mean, Lily doesn't use it very much in Christian astrology. They're definitely in horary, not so much in the natal. I mean, um, and so what that would typically mean to a modern would be that if it's not used, it's useless. I mean, that's the whole point. It's like all the stuff is to put together to be used immediately, and so that's why would you want to know anything that you're not immediately putting to use? One of the keys of my courses is that I'm going to allow the graduates of my courses to access the wider tradition. Okay, I mean, if you have a course where it's 100% lectures, you're sort of spoon feeding people, and all they know is exactly what you taught in the course, then you're very limited. And so that's another reason that I have people, read in my courses, read all these traditional sources. I want to get you exposed to those, but I also want to kind of give you a little bit of a taste of some of the techniques that are available in medieval Renaissance astrology, so you're just kind of aware of them. And you have this sort of full toolkit. And again, this is another strange thing for people. Is just that, just because you have 500 different tools in your toolkit doesn't mean you're going to use them on every single job. And it also doesn't mean you have a toolkit with one thing in it and use it for everything. I mean, that seems to be the modern approach. What we've got in medieval Renaissance is we've got an incredible number of techniques, a lot of which we're not using. And Lilly that happens all the time. You look at Christian astrology, let's say, well, this is such and such and such, and then he doesn't even use it. Okay? But he mentions it, you're aware of it. And so, how I've kind of come to deal with that is to recognize this is that, it's sort of like an artist. Just because there's 5,000 colors, you don't use all 5,000 colors, right? You're going to probably specialize. You like particular ones you like. You're going to only use a limited palette, okay, that suits you. And this is what I would say about this, master astrologers, that of the techniques that are available in the tradition, you're going to find certain ones that are really kind of resonant with you and that work well in your particular methodology. And that, again, isn't to say that everybody has to use it. Everyone, it's wrong to use anything else, or that this is the best way to do it. It's just what happens to resonate for you. Now, you're not going outside the tradition. You're still staying within, the techniques that are provided in the sources and used in the tradition. But you're going to have your own unique sort of mix of it. And so that was a good example there with those almutens. I mean, you don't have to have a difference in the trapezial rulership between horary, electional, and natal. I mean, that's just essentially, like I said, that's something that I've come up with on my own. It seems to work for me. It seems to give me, fit with my intuition and then give me accurate answers for me. Now, I certainly wouldn't suggest that this is objectively true for all astrologers for all time. It's a little bit illogical, and that's where you can see that the intuition has come into it to a certain extent. Um, so the other thing I would say about it is, and this is particularly true of the Almuten figuris, and so the Almuten figuris, you can put a link in there, looks at a whole bunch of different points in the chart. And it's, again, a sort of alternate chart ruler. There's lots of different ways to determine the chart ruler. Mutinous figures is one of them. And it's another one that I have in my courses that have my students work on is a temperament calculation. And so you add up all these different points in terms of which of the four humors, which of the four temperaments, um, choleric, sanguine, melancholic, and phlegmatic, which the person whose chart looking at, which their temperament is. Now, what I would say about the Almuten figuris and the temperament calculation, and not so much about the Almuten of the house because it don't have so many calculations, but definitely with those other two, is that it's interesting to go through these calculations and add them up and everything. I'm kind of skeptical though of their use. And again, I put them in the course so people kind of understand or the students are exposed to it. But frankly, I don't think that you really that they're as effective as other techniques. And here's the thing. Again, my view is that the techniques do not work by themselves. Okay, they're not standalone. They're not algorithms that automatically come up with the answer all by themselves. The astrologer is using their tools. Okay, it's like I said, like having different paintbrushes and palettes and paints and everything. There's only, if you've never painted before, you can't just pick up the stuff and create, a masterpiece. But if you're a master painter and you don't have any paint, again, you can't do anything. So the tools are extremely important, but it's the use of the astrologer of them. So when you do a mechanical method, you're kind of taking the astrologer out of it. The intuition, the judgment, the inspiration that's provided, the channels itself through the astrologer is just not present. So again, I know moderns love that kind of thing. They love to kind of add up numbers. And even Lilly, he's got a page where he adds everything together. All essential dinghies and accidental dinghies, all that stuff's mushed together. Jupiter is, 17. It becomes meaningless. Just a number all by itself doesn't give you much information. Only if you're in a situation where the astrologer can essentially make an intuitive use of it, as does I think it's useful. Now that's not to say just throw everything out the window, right? I mean, our intuition, what's wonderful about medieval Renaissance is that we have guided intuition. So for example, if I've got a horary chart and someone's asking if they're going to marry someone, so the ruler of the seventh is going to represent that person. The ruler of the seventh is in detriment. You're not going to be looking at that chart and saying, okay, you're going to have a great marriage, you're going to marry that person, it's going to be fantastic. That's a negative answer. Now, which it is, it's unwilling, unable, or unsuitable, you're going to have to see from the rest of the chart and see from your intuition. But you're not going to come in there and say, oh, well, I can, my intuition tells me that, it's going to be a great marriage. This is just, that would be not within the realm of the following the tradition. So, again, this is the key here is that we have a full toolkit, many, many techniques. We don't use them all, but we can experiment with them and understand them and see which ones fit with us, which ones make intuitive sense, which ones fit with with our individual approach, and then we can come up with an accurate answer. And that's really what's great about medieval Renaissance and why horary, for example, has such a great reputation, because it's continually tested. You've got this great technique. You've got a lot of people that have been working at it, and their teachers actually taught them, and they knew how to do it themselves. It's practical instruction by someone who's actually knows how to do this within the tradition, and then it's tested by reality. Because if you do a horary and you say, will I get the job, and you say yes, and they don't get it, well, you got a problem. That's immediately kind of back. When you're looking at Hitler's chart, when you're making, all this vague psychological stuff, it's basically never going to be wrong. So, but it's the combination of all those things working together. So again, what I would say about the Almuten stuff is it's useful to understand how to do this. And you can then look at, for example, look at Liber Astronomia, Guido Bonatti, or some of the Renaissance stuff. They went crazy and did all sorts of different kinds of Almutens. You can see how to figure those out. You can understand how the calculations are done. You can then work with them yourself, see if that resonates with you, see if that's something you want to include in your own astrological technique. So I hope that's useful. Like I said, interesting to see how to calculate the house Almuten, but it gets us into a bunch of other areas that I think are useful to understand about the differences between medieval Renaissance and modern, but also then again how a lot of other people approach it in terms of looking at it. And like I said, to me, there always must be this union of the technique and the intuition of the astrologer guided by the tradition, not outside of it, but again, always necessary to have that intuition experience and inspiration that comes to the astrologer. So again, hope you find that interesting, and I'm going to continue to do these highlight these various techniques, which again give us insight into these bigger issues in medieval Renaissance astrology.